So let's just start off. I want to say I'm such a fan. Party Down, Miss Maisel, only Murders in the Building, and so many others. I don't have all day to list them, so I'll stop there. But it's great to talk to you, and always great to see you, pop up in, like this series. You weren't on the first episode. I think you showed up like almost pretty late into the first season. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
pretty late. Yeah.
what a great addition.
Yeah. Loved
And
it.
and the way this season ends, or season three ended, it was the shocking death of Sazz, which was sad to see. And I was wondering, how did you learn about her fate? Was it something you knew going into the season, or did you learn kind of as the season went on? And what was your reaction to that?
Oh, I loved it. John Hoffman came up to me. I think it was probably the last episode I did, which I don't know if it was the last of the season or not, but I was obviously in the time when they were figuring out how they were going to go to the next season. And he said, "How do you feel about being dead and being a murder victim?" And I love it because when you're the murder victim, you get to be in flashbacks. And I'm not only in flashbacks, I've got some other things too that I don't want to exactly tell you about because I want you all to be surprised. But it means that I get to do more and I get to go to New York more and hang out with Steve Martin and Marty Short. And so it's been Selena Gomez. It's a good deal for me. So I'm doing about half of the episodes this season.
That's great. Yeah, when I first thought about it, I was thinking, oh, well, that's it, you're done. And then, my brain was like, duh. I looked at the IMDb and it had you listed for a bunch. I'm like, oh, wait a second, they have to tell your story. So this
Yeah.
is even maybe better than being alive.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. I mean, it means probably I won't be in the season after this should the show continue, but that's okay. Well, we all move on. But we get a
Yeah,
really wonderful, I get a really wonderful this season, which is great.
that's excellent. And then, I love who the character is, the body double for Steve Martin's Charles. And like, what a clever idea. And I'm wondering, what were your first instincts about how to play her when you learned who this character was? And is she who she is now as a character we know? Is that who she was when you first were kind of introduced to her?
Yeah, I think so. The writer is a good friend of mine, and she's the one who said, "Hey, we're going to put this character in. Do you want to play it?" And I said, "Yeah." So I knew that it would be written very well. So I imagine that yeah, I'm sure it was probably written that way, and that just kind of a guileless, innocent, but at the same time says kind of mean things, but it comes from a really good place. She's has no filter. She's happy-go-lucky, and it's in stark contrast to Steve Martin's Charles, who's kind of he's kind of a melancholy guy and kind of doesn't have much belief in himself, whereas Sazz has belief in herself in spades. And it turns out, and we're going to find out more in this season, what good friends they were and how much they did for each other and how much Sazz being in the world was a huge comfort to Charles. And there's some really touching moments. So I look forward to everybody seeing that. I'm really enjoying playing these scenes.
I look forward to that. That sounds great. And did you have an idea of like things that you wanted to do with the character when you first, were told of who she would be?
Well, I was really excited to be that kind of just one of those people who's lucky, who everybody likes. She has no problem in her love life. She could probably date a million women, but she always ends up dating the women that Steve Martin dates or Charles dates. Just being one of those people who kind of glides through life with kind of a pink bubble around them, where everything happens for them, and everything's positive. They don't see the world as a glass half empty. It's chock full. So I liked playing that kind of an optimistic, enthusiastic person.
And then, the doors open and we can walk into any party and fit right in and be like the
Yeah.
center of attention. And yeah, it's
Yeah. And love it. And love it. Yeah. And pretty kind, a little oblivious to other people's pain. It's like, well, why would you suffer that? But she has great compassion for Charles. So they were really good for each other. It kind of opened her up to how there are people in pain out there, and he's one of them. And she did a lot to help him. We find out how much she helped him during the Brazos years, and that's a fun story that we get to retell.
and One thing I noticed is she's almost always dressed like Charles. Is there,
Yeah.
was that always the case? Or like a,
Yeah, I think so. Oh, sure. I think that even back in Brazos, I think when she commits to being somebody's stunt double, and we learn a lot about the stunt double community in this episode. There's a whole community of stunt doubles, and they all hang out together, and they all go to the same bar, and it's really funny. But the big thing is you commit to your number one, and your number one is the person who's your stunt double. It's like a marriage. It's a you know that you take the punches for them. That's the gig. And sometimes the stunt double gets the appreciation, sometimes they don't, but definitely Sazz gets appreciation from Charles. So she sees her life in service to him, and it's a 24/7 thing as far as she's concerned. So that's why she dresses like him. She will stunt double him in his life if he. I mean, she broke up with a woman for him. She showed up with lines and did the breaking up for him. And then he does something for me in this episode that's very touching.
I just love the writing. I love, these characters, and that the places they take them, and you go, oh, that makes sense though. Like, it's not just
Yeah.
out there. It's like, oh, that's Charles. That's Sazz. It's
Yeah.
really
They've
great.
got a great grasp on the characters, and the characters are really well
Mhm.
defined, and they're really well acted by our trio.
And since this upcoming season, you are going to have to, you're going to show that your past with him, and you kind of talked about this, mimicking his moves and his gait and all that. Did you have to get into that more and really become Charles?
Yeah, well, I watch Steve a lot. When we start a scene, however he's sitting, I sit that way too. If he gestures in a certain way, if he's doing this kind of a thing and he talks, then I do it the mirror of him.
Is that a natural thing for you, mimicking?
Um, yeah, probably is. Yeah. I always wonder what it feels like to be another person, and sometimes you like if a person moves their hands a certain way, you probably do this too. Say they do this a lot, like you go, what does this feel like? Why would someone do this a lot? So I kind of like doing that anyway. But of course, it was my job in this is that I'm his stunt double, so I have to mirror everything he does. So
Eh,
it's not like crazy mirroring where you can't listen to what we're saying, but it's just subtle stuff.
And you're a legend working among legends. I'm wondering, how is it sharing scenes with such a great cast? Does it elevate your game? Is it the kind of, you know,
It does. It
brought new
elevates
out new
your game for
qualities?
sure. Hmm. Well, what's great about it is you're there because they think that you're on a level playing field with them, which and I remember in the beginning, like when I did a movie with Meryl Streep several years ago, but am I on a level playing field? Will I be able to rise to it? And, just from years of being kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool with really good people, you hold your own, and you have the confidence that you're there for a reason. And it's really fun to Steve called it like playing tennis back and forth. And I just love it. I love that I get to play tennis with Steve, and of course Marty and Selena too.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had nerves. I guess you do. But after all the roles, I was like, I was scrolling your IMDb. I'm like, when does this end? And like, but you still have nerves on set? Like,
No, not
is it
so much anymore. I really don't.
not
I
so
have a
much?
little bit of the biggest thing for me is, am I really good on my lines? Because if I'm not good on my lines, then it can't flow. So that's really what I'm worried about, that I'm going to embarrass myself that way, that I won't be perfect. And I'll be the one who falls down in the scene, not literally fall down, but like, ruins it for everybody. That always comes up. But I also am very familiar with that little devil on my shoulder, and know to kind of.
The season ended, of course, with the mystery, and she's writing in blood, and she had just said to Charles, "We need to talk about something." And I'm like, how quick do we dive into do we start getting answers? Because I mean,
It takes its time, and what it does, the flow of this season is you think after a certain episode, oh, and then you find out, whoa. So like any good mystery, it'll take you down rabbit holes, and then you'll find out that leads to nothing, that it's something over here. And so that's what, John Hoffman and the writers are so good at, is mystery, and I asked them too, do they start at the end and then reverse engineer? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's even bigger than they are. And it kind of writes itself, and they don't even know they were working toward this. But yeah, there's several times in the script that you will, watching the show, you'll feel that you figured it out, and you haven't.
Man, I can't wait. I've loved every season so far. And I'm like, even though, with the caliber of the cast, it still seems like kind of like the little show that could. I don't know why. It's just like
Yeah.
there's something about it
Well,
that
I think
makes
what's
you want to
great
root for
about it, there's a simplicity to it. And it's called Only Murders in the Building. So even though they went to a theater for it last season, but it basically takes place in these apartments. I mean, you get a strong sense of place and relationship. So that I think that's the best television, is that familiarity with the characters, their relationships, and the places. Like Cheers was about that bar.
Mhm.
Friends was about the apartment and that coffee shop, and then they go other places, but that's where you kind of came home with these characters. And I think that's what makes television what keeps you watching episode after episode, is that familiarity with these people and where they go.
Yeah, it's kind of like comfort food for the brain.
Yeah, it is. But then the writing can get very complex.
Well,
But
there's a different
the
spice in there.
parameters, yeah, exactly. The parameters of it very simple, and then
Mhm.
within it can go,
I meant TV
variety
in
of
general.
ways.
You grow attached
Mhm.
to these characters, and you feel like, okay, I could just jump in, and I'm hanging out with Charles. I'm hanging out with Saz. It's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
don't
That's what I
need a
love about
reintroduction
television.
every time.
Yeah, and there's kind of
And
a kind of let's reinvent the wheel with every episode, and I don't know why. Do a movie if you want to reinvent the wheel, but the thing about television is, I think that's enjoyment, is kind of like you said, comfort food.
yeah, I mean, that's why I go back to it. So you have worked with some amazing ensembles. This is one of them, the Christopher Guest films, Maisel, and of course Party Down, which is one of my all-time favorites. I just want to ask if you have any insight, because I know people are going to ask me, is there a season 4 coming? Are you open to it?
I'm open to it. I haven't heard anything, so fingers crossed
Okay.
for that. Yeah.
Every cast member I had the luck to speak with, or the honor to speak with, it says they're up for it. So hopefully,
Yeah.
maybe I have to email stars and start knocking on the doors.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. What did it take? 12 years to get the third season.
Yeah.
So hopefully we won't
Yeah,
have to
please
wait
don't wait that
long.
long. I
Yeah.
don't know if I can.
I'll be too old to
We'll be
cater.
watching. We'll be watching. Yeah, exactly. We'll be watching TVs on who knows what, in the sky at that point.
Right.
And after all the projects and the incredible people you've worked with, is there anything that on your wish list, anyone to work with, or any type of role or project that you'd like to work on that you haven't?
I'd like to do like a single camera comedy, or even a multicam, a sitcom. Well, I never did that as a regular. And I love, especially the multicam. I love the audience participation, and I sure as heck wouldn't mind doing something like that.
Was there one that you're a fan of that,
Well, I love Two
type
and a
of show?
Half Men. I mean, yeah, I love being on that show. And of course, I was only on a few episodes in the season. I loved Friends. I thought Friends was so good. And I love Will and Grace. And I haven't really seen Big Bang. Well, my sister's a big fan. But yeah, I like that format. And there's less of those shows these days, but I have a feeling that there's going to be a renaissance of those shows, because they work. They're
Yeah,
great.
they do.
Yeah.
And final question. 3 words to describe Saz.
Yes. Enthusiastic, positive, unfiltered.
I like it. That works.
Yeah.
A+ there. So thank you so much for your time and for all your work. I love watching it and looking forward to this next season.
Sure, Stephen. Thank you.